All right, I have a revelation I want to share with you, and I don't know why I'm like in the jungles of Vietnam. I think there's going to be like a parrot that's going to come out of here. This coffee shop needs some trimming, some gardening work. Okay, yesterday I did a 24-hour fast. It's the second time I've ever done that, and I learned something amazing through it about life. And I think it's a key to life. So the first time I did it, it was a couple years ago, and I remember it was like I thought I was dying. I was in a fetal position, obsessed about food and what I'm gonna eat. I was fighting it the entire time. I was miserable. Time seemed to stop. I started to get mad at people for no reason. I mean, it was crazy, right? But I got through it and I was like, oh, that's what that feels like. So that memory made me afraid again. But I was with a friend a few days ago, and we're talking about how he read through a USC article or some research about how a 72-hour fast totally cleans out your gut and resets you. And I have gut problems and bloating problems, and I think that's all related to sleep. And I've been having sleep problems for 5 years. And so I decided that I will do a 24-hour fast. And so I made the decision. And this time I cruised through it. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that because I was asking myself, what was the difference this time? And I'll tell you what the difference was. It wasn't circumstance. It wasn't, it was mindset. It wasn't mindset as in endurance, white knuckling, or trying to be, harder. It wasn't a mindset where it was about discipline. It was actually making a decision to do it and then surrendering to it. And not only surrendering to it, but actually leaning into it. Not only leaning into it, but actually welcoming it, enjoying it. Bring it on, not from an ego place, but from like a flow place, right? And because of that mindset, and also because I ate dinner really early that night, so I ate dinner like at 5 p.m., which is, by the way, a tip. If you want to do a 24-hour fast or any fast, eat dinner early because then you can sleep through a lot of it. But still, it was a 24-hour fast. I still went 24 hours and surrendering to it, because when you surrender, you don't have the inner conflict, right? The little kid, the little child that wants to throw peas at the wall and isn't happy, that part isn't coming out when you surrender. And I think that's the greatest difference between the first time where that kid was going fucking ape shit and it was like a Jerry Springer show with chairs and everything. And that inner conflict I think we all have is what made it so difficult and what made me want to curse my birth. This time, surrendering, right? Making a decision to just surrender and accept and lean into calms the child in you. And so what happens is you actually, you grow up, you become mature. You don't set yourself off into a panic state, right? And so then the growth is allowing things to be, the resistance that comes up, the pushback, dancing with it instead of, fighting it with your shield and sword. And I'm talking about this because I think this is what we do in life. I think that right now I'm talking about fasting, but whether you're talking about relationships or, anything, business or, all the stuff that we go through that creates inner conflict, right? If we surrender to it, and I don't mean surrender as in like back down if it's your truth, right? There are fights that we have to fight because it's us protecting ourselves and feeling that we have worth, right? We need to be heard. I'm not talking about those things. I'm talking about surrendering to things that you can control. Or if you made a decision to actually accept it and embrace it instead of fighting with yourself, A lot of people around me are going through changes in their relationships. There's been a lot of breakups, a lot of separation, all that kind of stuff. And even something like that, because I went through it with a divorce, if you fight that, it's gonna feel like my first 24-hour fast. If you don't fight it and you surrender to it and you accept it and you start there as your truth and you start to rebuild from there, it's gonna be a much better experience. The other thing I realized was when your body's in that state, you actually have a sense of clarity and it becomes a door into, I believe, a more of a spiritual plane. And put a bookmark there, because about 7 years ago, I had a friend who used to do a 3-day fast once in a while to feel closer to God. And I remember like, oh, you're going to starve yourself to feel closer to God? Why don't you just go to church, man? And I didn't understand why he did that. And now I get it. I totally get it. You, when you're in that kind of state, when you fast, what happens is your body slows down, right? Your senses, I believe your senses brighten, right? It's almost like you're on mushrooms where everything slows down, but also you're able to see things that you didn't before because you were moving too fast, right? So everything brightens, your mind gets very clear. And I think that like a door opens where you could have a spiritual experience. So anyway, one of the keys to life, guys, is surrendering, not holding on to things that you can't control. Yes, speak your piece, say what you have to say, express yourself, all that. But whatever is happening in your life, there's a lot of shit happening in my life that can change my life. And instead of trying to wrangle it and make it into what I want it to be, actually surrender it, allow the universe to unfold, and just focus on your truth and who you are and your relationship to yourself, and the rest will work out, you know. And I think that's when you start running toward your true north, right? That's when you catch momentum. That's when stars line up. If you decide to fight, if you decide to resist, your life is gonna look like a very squiggly, chaotic, actually not a line, it's gonna be a circle, meaning you're gonna live in your past.